big deal for him. And we're going to see him battling today, just playing all of our events with Mardu Midrange and the glare there, Obosh. This is an Obosh deck in our modern format. Obosh the Prey Piercer, all odd cards. Not one I've seen that often in modern, Mason. What do you think of this deck?
Yeah, so players have been experimenting with Obosh decks since its release. It's sort of the companion that I would say has gotten the most play, but not the most consistent results. It's a deck that, we've seen players actually do very well with red-white on MTGO from time to time. And so it looks like Robert here is trying to pair that with some of the black cards. And it's a spot that really, I think, is unexplored by the wider modern audience. So it's going to be cool to see Robert's take on it because, like you mentioned yesterday, Robert had a sort of rough start. We played one of our rebound RCQs and just won it all. Went undefeated through that. And so we're going to see if Robert can keep it up here. But yeah, looking at the deck list here, we have them pulled up. Robert has some really neat additions to the deck, I think. And it's going to help in certain matchups having these black cards. Things like Thoughtseize, Inquisition, and Kozilek are going to help a bunch in fighting through these counter spells and also against the various combo decks.
Absolutely. And of course, his opponent, Taylor Kaiser, on Murktide, going to kick us off with the signature start. Spirebluff Canal into Ragavan, Nimble, Pilferer. This is the start that makes Murktide what it is in Modern, despite being named after Murktide Regent. Ragavan, pretty strong card, I think we figured out. We'll see with this crack of the Bloodstained Mire what Robert Ganzi has to say about that.
Yeah, a little bit of a propaganda machine, not to call it, the deck Ragavan. It's just that way players don't realize, but, it's okay. Yeah.
Just kind of mask what the actual problem is here. Yeah, worried about the Murktides. You can let this Ragavan hit you. It's totally cool.
Yeah. You're not gonna assault my Ragavan. My deck's called Murktide.
A little bit of Spider-Man meme here as Robert Ganzi also going to kick us off with a turn 1 Ragavan. Being able to play that card, a big deal as far as being able to support Obosh and still have a powerful game plan. We will see if Taylor has a removal spell to follow up. I'm going to start with a Mishra's Bauble. Target myself. A little bit of Bauble. Yeah, look at how about that? A little Bauble trickery. Gonna fetch with the Misty Rainforest. Doesn't like that card on top. Gonna go ahead and get rid of that one. Basic Island to find.
Yeah, and this is something that we've seen a lot from the Murktide decks is, they want to play Bauble to really turn on Unholy Heat, DRC, and things like that. And it gives you a nice little bit of selection early on. We saw this in the Shadow decks in early 2016, and it's sort of been really adopted into Modern and really helps just give the consistency to this deck. Having, basically like a 56 card deck means you're going to find the cards you want and can play the game plans you want to play, which is very important in this style of deck.
Absolutely. And Ragavan's going to trade off as well. Setting up Delirium, maybe worth noting from Taylor here right off the jump, but no follow-up after the Ragavan play, it looks like. And we move back to Robert Ganzi. Oh, maybe. Yeah, I don't think Robert's drawn yet. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and get our card for Mishra's Bauble.
Yeah, it looks like Taylor probably said, drawing up, keeping Robert had just picked up the card. Taylor's like, hey.
I just went ahead and drew. A little clunky for that reason, potentially. I can see why we've maybe moved away from those delayed triggers as time has gone on.
Yeah, it turns out it's not super fun, and it's not a good place to put your power, If, that was a thing that we just saw only in Cube, then okay, cool. But, for it to be a mainstay in a competitive format, maybe not the place to put your power, but, it was a different time. That was maybe 6 weeks, it happens.
Once we see, Underworld Breach putting, whatever, you have to track how many times you cast and crack this thing, putting, 7 to 8 triggers on the stack. I think that's the point at which, I see. When taken to extremes, maybe this isn't as good. This is not what we're trying to do. We're very quickly going to dash a Ragavan this time. Not interested in getting that one tagged by any sorcery speed removal spell or blocked. And Lightning Bolt, the reveal off the top from Taylor's deck. See if that's worth cracking a treasure to get 3 extra points. Does not appear to be. Going to use the treasure to Thoughtseize. Response. Spell Pierce. That one's going to take care of the Thoughtseize. Ragavan's going to go back to hand, and back to Taylor we go. Now let's see what Taylor was so interested in protecting. Another island added to the mix, passing of the turn.
Interesting. I thought Taylor maybe was protecting a card like a Murktide Regent, maybe just had a fast draw there. Taylor does play 1 Archmage's Charm, so that might be sort of what's going on there. And Taylor's like, I got the next turn covered.
Yeah, got a little bit of view on the grip there. It looks like a pair of counterspells, a Lightning Bolt, and a land. Totally fine. I mean, Spell Pierce kind of expiring as time goes on, and the counterspells are good things to kind of hide information about, so I can kind of see that.
Yeah, especially if your opponent's playing an Obosh deck. You can assume there are a lot of powerful 3-drops in the deck. So something like Seasoned Pyromancer, Liliana the Veil, these are cards you can pretty easily predict coming down. It makes a lot of sense to want to make sure, hey, I've got a counterspell for those.
And as you called out, there is Seasoned Pyromancer off of the Fetched Plains. Going to eat a counterspell very quickly. So even though there's a little bit of graveyard value there, does get does not get the enters the battlefield effect from the very powerful 3-mana card from Modern Horizons. And Expressive Iteration, the follow-up here for Taylor. Very, very well known how powerful that card is. I think Modern may be one of the only formats left where it's legal, and very powerful. And once again, another real big draw to the Murktide deck, despite being called Murktide. I'd say cards like Ragavan and Expressive Iteration do a lot more to define kind of what's going on here than Murktide Regent on its own.
Yeah, Expressive Iteration really lets this deck be more than just a tempo deck. Like, it gets to play like a gen deck. It actually gets to trade resources. This is a card that puts you up 2 cards at its strongest. You know, Taylor here actually played it and didn't get any value off it because wanted to hold up Counterspell. And so that's going to make that Expressive Iteration fall off a little bit. That's a great sign if you're a Robert fan. Not getting that 2-for-1 value in this sort of mid-rangey matchup is something that Taylor really needs. And maybe he was looking for, you know, another red source land to, you know, combo off later. But you'll typically see players hold that card until it's like the last thing they can possibly do because the value matters so much.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, typically, exactly. Use it for that, or, you know, just to hit your land drops or whatever, but not casting to consider here, like you mentioned, real loud declaration that there's Counterspell in the mix. And now if you're Robert Ganzi, you can kind of proceed with that information. Do things like this, where you just maybe spend only a little bit of mana where the Counterspell is not that good. You know, do things like pick up your Obosh and all that stuff. Like, if your opponent has no pressure and is like that determined to hold up Counterspell, you know, that's a lot for what Robert can do to navigate this game. Going to respond to a lightning bolt targeting Ragavan here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Robert clearly has something because he had 3 mana, you know, and I like playing just the Ragavan to beta Counterspell and maybe having a follow-up play that puts Taylor in a really hard position, but didn't pick up the Obosh, so clearly there's something going on in the hand.
We'll see what's up here. A lot of 3-mana instants available to Robert, little one-ofs and stuff like that. We'll see if we're going to see one of those. And it's going to be a channeled Takenuma. Need to get that legendary discount ahead of schedule here. So we're going to go ahead and channel that one. Now it's going to mill 3 cards here. Fury and Seasoned Pyromancer among the mix. Some good mills. Got options and another graveyard value card in the mix. And going to pick up a Seasoned Pyromancer as Ragavan is going to be dispatched by the Lightning Bolt.
Also, a first time in coverage history, Takenuma actually cycled. So that's great for the NRG series. Make sure to clip that for our best of.
Is that on the bingo sheet? I'm gonna go ahead and check that one off. Finally, the rare score.
Yeah, I mean, I no one's ever seen it happen before, so it's got to be on the bingo sheet.
Absolutely. Untap Steam Vince here. That's gonna dash a Ragavan with Robert all tapped out. That one's gonna work and is gonna find a Bone Crusher Giant. Well, I have to imagine there's some worse hits than that one.
Yeah, it's interesting too because, you know, Taylor knows Robert picked up that Seasoned Pyromancer's low on cards, but this stomp's very appealing because if you stomp, you do get to put the giant on your adventure. So Taylor would be up, you know, 2 damage and a body if he chooses to lower the shields.
Yeah, I'm glad that works flavorfully. You know, that would be such like a trap if you stomped and like they got the card. It's like, wait a minute, this is not what I ordered. Gonna choose to do nothing. So determined to hold up this Counterspell. And you know, we'll see that we do know about this Seasoned Pyromancer that, you know, is going to align with this Counterspell. And Robert, you know, has to be aware at this point in time. Counterspell in the mix. How to proceed from there, maybe not as clear. Robert, plenty of cards in hand. And once again, that Obosh the Prey Piercer just waiting for its time to get involved in the mix as well. So we'll see. Looks like Bone Crusher Giant, Seasoned Pyromancer. Can't get a great look on the last card.
It's interesting, too, from Robert's point of view, because Robert has the Seasoned Pyromancer in the graveyard. So even a land here is a great draw as he can flash back the Pyromancer to make 2/1/1. So Lingering Souls, that's
was the third card. Yeah, how about that one? Pretty good against the Ragavan that's being dashed. Yeah, that one's not going to work too much longer. And yeah, Taylor's like, no thanks. I'd like my Ragavan to work, please. Going to counterspell the Lingering Souls and pass the turn back. But I think we might be just about out of specific counter spells here. So this Ragavan going to need to start doing some work. And Bloodstained Mire is the hit. Maybe in the wrong order of these Ragavan hits for Taylor. I bet we'd be interested in this Bone Crusher Giant right about now.
And I really like the way Robert sort of played this, where on multiple turns, he's sort of been like, hey, I know you have Counterspell. I'm going to play the thing that you kind of have to do something about. But if you don't, I'm going to get really far ahead. And then it punishes these Counterspells too. You know, Lingering Souls, that's a spell with flashback. We could very easily, you know, resolve a Pyromancer, hit a land, flashback this Lingering Souls.
Absolutely. And that's exactly, I mean, that's what we're doing here. It's just, you know, we're going to go ahead and flashback this Lingering Souls, get our value out of that now. And looks like no counter magic can happen there. 2 spirits going to be added to the mix. And now this Ragavan facing down some roadblocks as far as being able to get into the red zone. So we'll see if Taylor's going to pivot here. And even like, I mean, these spirits could do something to maybe answer some of the other threats that Taylor could even have at all here. maybe a little innocuous, but even just blocking a Murktide for a turn or whatever buys a lot of time for this Mardu deck.
Yeah, if you think about it, Lingering Souls is low-key like a draw 2 in this deck against the Murktide Regent, right? Which is sometimes what you need when your deck does have high-impact answer cards, as Stomp gets cast on the Ragavan.
Yeah, I mean, Stomp, I think this shows how valuable these spirits may actually be for Robert here, that we're willing to go ahead and, you know what, instead of just blocking this, which, you know, is free and on the table, we're going to go ahead and just use the Stomp on the Ragavan and preserve my spirit token. That way I can either, you know, whatever, start getting busy with some of them, you know, have it for future Ragavans, future blockers. And we're going to Lightning Bolt the Ragavan in response to Fizzle the Bone Crusher Giant. Don't want getting extra value out of that, but still a 2-for-1 for Robert as we go back to his turn.
Yeah, Taylor not wanting Robert to deploy the Bone Crusher Giant there. I like the idea in theory, though I think Robert's hand's a little full. But, you know, Taylor might also just be trying to set up for big Murktides. It looks like Bolt and something else was discarded. 2 spells means 2 tokens. And we've just got...
Yeah,
are we
these are 2
tokens?
1-for-1s.
Yeah.
Yeah, more tokens on the ground, and now suddenly this force looking very overwhelming. Izzet Murktide not known for having a wide variety of sweepers in the main deck, so these tokens going to be worth quite a bit as this game progresses. And we've seen, I mean, Taylor be very aggressive about making sure to counter some of these token generators, but with, you know, Taylor just about out of counter spells, something, I mean, like a Murktide here that was being cast, going to be big, is kind of exactly what Taylor needs. Something to be able to block and start kind of play the Abyss role, because that's the only way we're going to be able to start working through these tokens over time that doesn't cost cards.
Yeah, and you're seeing Robert choose, you know, he could have bolted and lost the token, but the tokens, I guess the tokens actually don't, Obosh is odd. I was thinking that they got doubled, but, you know, choosing to have the value on the board is still something, right? Like it is a real choice versus just 3 damage, you know? So,
yeah. Well, we'll see how Robert wants to proceed now. I mean, even still, attacking into a Murktide isn't great, but when you have a bunch of 1/1 tokens, it's not that bad. Going wide, not that weak against going tall. And it looks like Robert does decide to just buy the... No, he didn't buy the Obosh. I didn't get a great look at what he did.
No, I think he did, because the companion tokens. Yeah.
I see. It's a companion zone token. I see.
Yeah.
A little bit of glare on that side of things. Can't get a great look. We got an on the adventure right next to the companion, but we got it all figured out. As here is a chump block. This is exactly what we're kind of talking about. Preserving that spirit token, certainly worth something now in the face of all this pressure, and a certainly delirious Dragon's Rage Channeler added to the mix as well for Taylor.
Yep. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting here. You know, Robert hasn't found the 5th land. Getting the tokens is a way to go, you know, around this sort of Murktide. Now the DRC is sort of holding up some blocks, but looks like we're going to Prismatic Ending.
Ooh, maybe not. Not with Prismatic Ending coming down. That was a great pickup for Robert, and the way is clear now. Can crunch 4-5 right now, but still dead 2-1 Murktide hit. And so that means a removal spell for the spirit is potentially problematic. So we'll see. I mean, Murktide, once again, deck's called Murktide. It's going to go to work. But, I mean, it's very, very risky not attacking with everything. Can't attack with the spirit. Got to have some kind of follow-up. And this may be a sign of no follow-up. So maybe Taylor drawing to a removal spell to win this one?
Yeah, Taylor has Liliana the Veil in the deck, and I think that's it when it comes to actual hard answers. Oh, sorry, we have a Kaya's Guile as well. So yeah, we're drawing to 2 stack effects. So killing the DRC is very important in multiple ways. So I guess we're really leaning on this Fable the Mirror Breaker, as usual for Fable the Mirror Breaker. A little bit of an unknown card for the viewers at home, Drake. So maybe they can look.
Never seen that one before, huh? That one's not super involved in the Magic the Gathering formats of any kind. Yeah, it's going to do a lot, as you mentioned, to maybe dig towards an answer for this Murktide Regent. And now these players kind of in a standoff, both at 8 life. One with, 7 power in play. The other with 8 power in play. You'd think in favor of the 8 power. We'll see exactly what Taylor can assemble. Of course, removal spell here, likely good enough to win. I have to imagine that would be fired off pretty quickly. So just an attack here. Going to eat the obvious jump block. Now we will see what Robert can assemble in what is likely the final turn of this game.
Yes, someone's going to be losing the next turn cycle.
Yeah, this game is very close to its conclusion, and this Fable the Mirror Breaker going to do a lot. I think we see push, another Fable, Obosh, Fury as the current hand. We'll see which, if any of these, I have to imagine we're getting rid of some, Robert is interested in throwing in the graveyard.
Yeah, I like what Robert's doing right now. Robert knows he has to draw one of his 2 sacrifice effects, but if Taylor has, maybe a bolt or something like that, the game could keep going. Taylor could go bolt into, Expressive Iteration. Maybe the game stabilizes for a little bit. That'd be the only way, though. But Robert's being like, well, if that's the only thing that matters, let me take a second to think about it. This game is going to be over either in 1 turn or 20 turns. So I might as well take a second.
Absolutely. And here we go. Here is an attack. Everything but one. Respecting potentially a Ragavan dash?
Yeah, this signifies to me that Robert thinks that the Murktide Regent is covered.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think it's covered trying to cover other things. And a follow-up Lingering Souls, that does do a good job of covering Murktide for quite a long time. He did find an answer.
Yeah, and, I forgot about that, how that, there's 3 of those, and if we flash back to block with that, too. That's such a good one against, a Counterspell or something along those lines. So now Taylor's in an awkward position.
Yeah, Taylor's in a ton of trouble. What can we even find here? Has to be some sequence of removal spells, some kind of unblockability, and there's nothing. Taylor going to pick it up in a timely Lingering Souls for Robert's going to close what was otherwise, incredibly close game.
Yeah, and this is probably one of the reasons we're seeing Robert move to a card like Lingering Souls, right? It seems to be incredibly powerful in these 1-for-1 heavy games, which Modern really is this point. And Izzet Murktide, one of the most popular and best decks in the format, this card lines up incredibly well there. So really impressive to see those deck building decisions pay off right here.
Absolutely. And, we called out, a lot of counterspells involved in the Murktide deck. A lot of Robert's cards good against counterspells. Lingering Souls part of those, and they certainly performed there. With that, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the sideboard options available to these players. So here's Taylor Kaiser. Izzet Murktide looking fairly stocked as far as what we've seen before across, not only our events, but Magic Online for Murktide. What do we like here as far as an approach to all of these tokens and beating these cards where counterspells maybe aren't so good for Taylor?
Yeah, I think we're going to probably want these engineered explosives. That's going to clean up a card like Lingering Souls really cleanly for us. We might want our own Seasoned Pyromancers, too, as a way to go longer. I could also see Dress Down being a card that we potentially want. That, we don't know exactly all the 3-drops and powerful cards that the Obosh player could be playing. So Dress Down is a card that we might want to see in that spot. It really depends on kind of how many of these counterspell effects you want. We got a couple Spell Pierces, Archmage's Charm. These cards can kind of be awkward when our opponent's multi-spelling. So really about approach there from Taylor. Taylor could also maybe cut Murktide Regents if they think there's going to be a lot of graveyard hate. That's something that we sometimes see players do. Taylor has opted to have the 4 Murktides in the main. A lot of people do 3 in the main. So, very much a lot of options available to Taylor and how he wants to approach the deck and the game, which is a big draw to the Murktide Regent deck in general.
Yeah, very, very flexible. And, especially when it comes to maybe, not as known of a deck is this Mardu mid-range Obosh setup that Robert is presenting. So, maybe even decides on a plan here in game 2 and wins that one. Maybe it changes in game 3 based on the look he sees in that game. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at Robert's deck list, see exactly how he wants to do things. A little bit more face up for Robert. Murktide is usually Murktide, and I imagine he has a plan for this. Obosh, going to work with all the sideboard cards. Don't have to leave that one behind by doing any amount of sideboarding. No ley lines or anything like that present. But a lot of removal spells from Murktide. I have to imagine those look good. How do we want to sideboard here?
Yeah, so we have this Kaya's Guile that can hit both the graveyard and sacrifice a Murktide Regent with like those. Path to Exile is going to be pretty good. Just a clean answer to that. Outside of that, we don't really have much more besides a Relic of Progenitus, which we could bring in as a way to sort of manage the graveyard. Cards like Unholy Heat might be problematic. Maybe DRC is something we're worried about. I could see that, either making it or not. It looks like Robert really geared his sideboard to beating up on the Hammer deck. 4 Wear Tears. Kaya Orzhov Usurper, March of the Otherworldly Light, a lot Blossoming Calm is a card to hit or the scam decks. It looks like Robert kind of has picked a few decks and is sort of just hard targeting those, which is a great way to sort of approach your brew. If you think you have strong game in a couple matchups like this, we saw a lot of cards that make counterspell awkward and things like that. You just don't have many cards that are hard hammers in the matchup. And instead you choose to have these cards that are applicable in lots of places. Like Path to Exile, if your opponent plays creatures, it's going to be pretty good. So I imagine we'll see Robert do that here.
Yeah, one card I do want to call out before we kind of move back to the match is this card, Kaya Orzhov Usurper. That's a card that the down tick take care of a lot of the 1-drop threats. Up tick maybe can exile the graveyard. I can see that card potentially being added to the mix as well. It's a card that you used to see quite a bit of play across multiple formats, and maybe not so much anymore. We'll see if he brings that one in as players are off the races. Taylor once again kicking things off with the Spirebluff Canal and Robert with Bloodstained Mire. Neither player with Ragavan this time is considered going to leave the card on top. And back to Taylor's turn we go. Yeah, maybe less pressure for Ragavans in game 2 when there's a lot of removal spells flying around.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how it plays out too, because I would imagine that my Murktide opponent, if they saw what we saw in game 1, they would probably trim down on Spell Pierce. And so Kaya might even be a little bit better than we might think in the abstract, where it's like, oh, this deck has a bunch of Spell Pierces and stuff like that. It's going to be awkward to run your 3-mana spell into it. But Spell Pierce lines up really poorly with all the spells Taylor saw outside of, the discard spells. So even then, they have a fall-off rate. So we might see that those go, and the Kaya might be a great way to come in here.
Absolutely. And Ledger Shredder is deployed on turn 2 for Taylor. Going to be quickly answered with 2 mana for a Prismatic Ending by Robert. So the player's very much back and forth here. It's a shock on Steam Vents, likely for the Archmage's Charm in Taylor's hand as the turn gets passed back. Maybe a little bit of telegraphing. We'll see. Robert did a good job playing around counterspells, in part because of his deck construction. I mean, obviously, all these cards flashback, even Seasoned Pyromancer having a form of its own flashback. All this came up in game 1. And we'll see in the face of Archmage's Charm if, Robert can maybe get some of that done again this game. But maybe no land as an in-step Archmage's Charm.
Robert, having a lot of respect right now, has a Ragavan in hand and chooses just to pass the turn. And Taylor must be wanting to make the land drops, just, takes this opportunity to get a draw 2 off the Archmage's Charm, convert to some more material. But yeah, it looks like Robert's just got a bunch of answer spells in hand and a Ragavan.
Yeah, not playing the Ragavan, huge here. Really heads up. Could have gotten that one stolen. Although that one might go back to hand even if you dash it. But, even just deploying it, anything like that, Archmage's Charm lines up great. Gets cashed out for 2 cards, but that's more or less kind of the floor on Archmage's Charm. That's why the card is so powerful and sees play across multiple formats. And here's a quick turn 4 Murktide. Only 2 spells underneath that one, but a 5/5 can get the job done very quickly. Is quickly going to get Path to Exile by Robert. No thank you. Thanks to this sideboard Path to Exile. I'm going to go ahead and answer it, the Murktide Regent.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of basics from Taylor. I wonder if Taylor considered Blood Moon since their opponent is on a Mardu strategy. We saw a decent number of basics in the last game, but I wouldn't be surprised maybe if Taylor brought in Blood Moon just like, hey, I'm on the play. I'm not exactly sure my opponent's mana base. Let's see if they built their deck correctly or not.
Right. I mean, and that's a good call too. In game 1, we saw quite a bit of like fetching for like islands where we could get steam vents and stuff like that. And it actually cost Taylor later in the game when we had to like, shock just to like dash and we were kind of short on red sources. I think there's a lot of respect for potential for even main deck Blood Moons out of the Obosh deck, because that's something that we've seen before in Modern. We've seen, typically one of the best options for a deck that can only play odd cards is Blood Moon, a card a lot of people are playing when they can play with any cards. So, a lot of respect, I think, for Blood Moon, and I think it's good to call that one out, especially with a Swamp already on the table. But I can't imagine Robert's overly interested in that card in this matchup, given the quality of the other cards. Here's Seasoned Pyromancer. You see him kind of look up expecting a counterspell. It looks like that one's going to resolve.
Yeah, Taylor's thinking about it. It looks like it did resolve as Robert seems to be resolving it. Also, worth noting, the Jace the Mind Sculptor was the hit off Ragavan last turn. That seems like Taylor maybe took a more controlling role this game and having that card in the deck to go long, and losing that one is definitely going to hurt.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with a fetch land and all that mana, I'm sure Taylor would have loved to be casting a Jace the Mind Sculptor on that previous turn. Empty board, ton of mana, and a fetch land. Yeah, it would have been a great one. Getting that one out of here is a huge deal. Kind of a shame Robert couldn't cast it. That would have been sweet.
Yeah. To the surprise of no one, by the way, Robert made 2 tokens, stuck on lands for a bunch of turn, had some spells to discard. Crazy how that works out.
Yeah. It turns out this card's pretty good when you can actually cast it and you're a little behind on lands. Ditching an extra copy, worth noting, that could come up later in the game. And clear also that maybe Robert a little flooded on things to do with 3 mana.
And it looks like Taylor is just trying to find a threat right now. Seems to have like bolts and cards of that nature. Did find a Ledger Shredder.
Expressive Iteration, I think, among the mix. Is this a Fury? I think this is a Fury.
Bam!
Yes.
Hard cast. Let him
Get it all. Get it all out of here. No, thank you. Response. Bolt the Fury, I think. All right.
Yeah.
Keep the board clear. Makes sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, and not the worst exchange in the world here. Taylor is just trying to kind of, looks like, set up for this Ledger Shredder, since it's the only threat besides the Fury, and it's something that you kind of want to double spell with when you play on the same turn. Probably just still want to bolt down a Seasoned Pyromancer and is waiting to develop it as a dash Ragavan.
You have to imagine that one's going to eat a bolt. Can't really wait on that one too long, especially at this stage, kind of in late game. And, Robert's short on mana. Getting hit by a Ragavan could be potentially disastrous, as Robert does have another land. March Flat's the follow-up, so maybe breaking out of this little bit of mana shortage that was happening for Robert, as Taylor deploys the Ledger Shredder follow-up. Expressive Iteration?
Maybe.
Sure is.
It does trigger the Expressive. Yeah,
and
Taylor
with that guy.
Discarding a lightning bolt. Yeah, Taylor really aggressive with the expressive iterations, you know, making sure to always play them kind of at the first opportunity and not getting a lot of double spells off these games. Is
land being the hit for Taylor. Can't imagine that's super great when we're this many lands in, but we did just tap 4 mana. Maybe we have something we can do with the remaining 3 mana. And we're gonna go ahead and fetch on instep is Robert Ganzi, building up to potentially 5 mana. That opens the door for things like a hardcast Fury. If we have a 5th land, be a big deal in the face of a Ledger Shredder. But we see Counterspell, Engineered Explosives, among other answers. Taylor been maybe a little threat light over the course of this game. Now with a threat in play, should have plenty of interaction to defend it. So we'll see. Should be seeing a little bit of back and forth as players start to assemble some pressure.
Looks like Taylor also has an expressive iteration in hand. Pick that up off the last expressive. So if you are going to have an expressive not go super well, that's the best way to do it.
True. Prismatic Ending coming down. See if there's a response. There is. Counterspell. Going to go ahead and pick that one off. Any follow-up for Robert should trigger the Ledger Shredder. We'll see if he's interested in doing that as a Blood Crypt coming in untapped.
I think this might be a Kyle's Guile here from Robert.
Kyle's Guile. I'll tell you what, I love that card. That was a card people tried to make work for so long when it came out. Seeing it finally get a little bit of resurgence here in 2023 makes me smile.
Same.
And there it is.
Shout out to Zach Allen.
Control. Yeah. Control just master. This card really good in a lot of Esper setups. Sack a creature, exile that in graveyard, takes care of any future. Murktide Regent shrinks those Dragon's Rage channelers. So answer a threat, maybe do some amount of work to answer future threats. Looks great here. Kai's Guile.
Yeah, and here's the expressive iteration with all the mana. Taylor, if there's 2 spells, is going to get those 2 spells.
There is 2 spells, but kind of awkward potentially. Counterspell a card you want in your hand. You're going to go ahead and exile a Lightning Bolt. Have to imagine that land worse than even just 3 damage to the dome. But, you know, obviously ideally would like to be exchanging with a card of Robert's. These expressive iterations, you know, maybe not been completely ideal, but still strong. A lot of 2-for-1s have come through for Taylor, the Fury, multiple iterations, that kind of stuff. So plenty of mana to work with. Still cards in hand to work with. But Robert does as well. Only a little bit behind in mana at this point.
Does Robert have Obosh in the companion zone? I think that's just the companion card.
No, I think there's 2 cards. I think
that's
there's
Obosh.
no Bosh.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's no Bosh there. As Bone Crusher Giant deployed, we've seen the board be so clear. I mean, we just saw Lightning Bolt go face. We just, you know, elected not to use a stop. Really interesting. These Ragavan, you know, kind of expectations, I'll say, with these removal spells. Maybe a little bit missing.
Yeah. Also, I would say this too, that Robert has a lot of respect for the card Spell Pierce there, right? Like if you think Spell Pierce is a card Taylor might have, then it makes sense to not stomp. Otherwise, you know, stomping is like a pretty good way to get something here. Also, Taylor says, no, I'm bolting you, and deploys the Murktide Regent.
Bolt face.
Yeah, now that Bolt last turn's looking pretty good.
Yeah, now we're in a racing situation with Murktide Regent, and what a powerful card, Murktide Regent. You know, we just had the entire graveyard annihilated from Akaya's Guile. 2 bolts later, and, you know, with this expressive iteration, we have this Murktide Regent, 6/6 in the air. Going to do a lot to race Robert now at 10. So we get a good look at the very powerful Blue Dragon from Modern Horizons 2. Delve flying, 2 powerful keywords, I have to say.
Yeah. You know, one thing to keep in mind too is when you're Izzet Murktide player and you're trying to figure out how am I going to win these games, I'm kind of behind. A good sort of heuristic to fall back on is if I can assemble Murktide plus Counterspell and the board's relatively clean, I can typically go the distance against that. It's very hard to kill a Murktide Regent. We saw in this game, Robert, you needed a Path to Exile as one of the only clean ways to answer it. Here, you know, is hoping to maybe combine something like a Lightning Bolt. We see Taylor kind of squint at the eyes.
I love this attack. The bolts have been just awful all game, so it's just like, you know, very reasonable that Robert would potentially be flooded on it. This would be such a sick bluff attack. I legitimately hope Robert just doesn't have it here. Here you go, 4. Blocking? What you got? Yeah. No, I didn't think so. 10 all.
Robert like, okay, well, I got to do something with these cards now. There's a Ragavan.
Ragavan deployed. Thinking of that one potentially. Maybe that one happens. Follow up by Obosh. Yeah, that one's going to hit the hand. And passing of the turn as Taylor untaps quite a few lands. Engineered Explosives for 1. That takes care of the Ragavan. Goodbye. Not wasting any time on that. Follow up. Dragon's Rage Channeler. Maybe could have played that one first and got a Surveil, but you know, then you lose your Dragon Rage channel. I just don't know how much that's going to matter with Murktide in the air. Going to get answered by a Fatal Push anyway. Turn passed back. Need a lot of damage this turn for Robert in order to win this, and Obosh doesn't do it on its own.
Yeah, Obosh doesn't do it on its own, even with this Bone Crusher Giant getting doubled up, even if we didn't have a counterspell here from Taylor. I think Taylor did a good job sort of navigating this game to get to a spot where it's like, okay, I fought over the things I needed to. Bone Crusher Giant doesn't matter. I have big draws that can beat that. And now, you know, Taylor's rewarded here, putting Robert once again in a very awkward position.
Absolutely. And we've seen this kind of situation where the players, you know, tied up life totals kind of in this racing setup as Obosh going to get deployed immediately, answers counterspell. No, thank you. That Bone Crusher Giant can stay small. And Robert now looking to face down a losing race against a Murktide Regent. Pretty low on resources. This is exactly the kind of setups that Murktide's looking to get to. Low resource, but the Murktide player has a Murktide left over. And that's exactly where we're at with Taylor. Things looking really, really good. And yeah, there we go. Taylor picks up game number 2 off the back of Murktide Regent. I mean, the deck's called Murktide, Mason.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, our life totals were not updated there, so that was a moment of, you know, that's why the player conceded. They weren't actually at 10, they were at 4. But yes, no, I mean, the Murktide deck does such a good job of sort of, you know, one-for-oneing over the cards that actually matter, and then using their creatures to sort of invalidate some of the other ones, whether that's, you know, flying over the top of them to kill you, or, you know, like having a big Murktide or a big Lotus Shredder back on defense, sort of like, all right, yeah, you've got these creatures, but they can't really attack, so, like, does it matter? And then when I get my Murktide, I'll start attacking.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what happened. And even through Graveyard Hate, and we saw multiple answers from Robert as well. We saw a Path to Exile come down on a creature that wasn't a Murktide. We saw a Sacrifice come down on a creature that wasn't a Murktide. So, you know, they have these answers in your hand for Murktide Regent, but had to use them on other threats. And kind of at the end of the game, you're left with the Bone Crusher Giant that doesn't answer Murktide Regent. And, you know, then that's kind of the setup the deck's looking for and why it's so powerful that Murktide's the card that comes down last. So with that, we'll see. Let's take a look at the players' deck list one more time as they move on to game 3. See if there's any adjustments we want to make from Robert Ganzi's side. Maybe with less targets for these bolts and stomps. Is that, you know, something that we're looking to throttle a little bit back on after watching our game number 2?
Maybe I will say this, that the Bone Crusher Giant also being a creature does matter. We saw in that game sort of got outpaced, but being both, you know, a Ragavan and creature, we maybe go down on that card, but we probably want to keep some of them, and probably similar for Bolt. Just want to make sure we can actually kill Ledger Shredders before Connives go off. They are very awkward in the matchup, but, you know, Robert only has 2 bolts. You probably don't even want to have that many, so it probably won't be the end of the world. And I just think Robert doesn't have enough cards to actually bring in. We could maybe see a world where March of Otherworldly Light comes in, so that way we can always kill a Ledger Shredder, you know, for 3 mana. If you're willing to make that sort of exchange. We played a kind of a long game. We didn't see any spell pierces there. But I don't think we want anything, you know, Ashiok Dreamrender, kind of a cute card. You know, you go turn 1 Ragavan, turn 2 that. But I think that's going to probably end up being more of a liability than something that we actually want in this particular matchup.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Yeah, like I said, we saw some bolts and stuff. The Bone Crusher Giant, like you said, being a creature matters a lot. Going to matter for the races, like we saw at the end of the game there. So probably gonna keep those in, maybe throw back on other stuff. And players shuffling up very quick, ready for here. Can't imagine Taylor's interested in too many changes, although the Jace really heads up. You know, obviously planning for a lot of 2-for-1s, a lot of exchanges. I'm surprised to see that one come in, but it did look very, very good for Taylor and his plan for the matchup as Robert gets to kick things off for the first time with a tapped Savai Triome.
Ooh, way to pass.
I said that right.
On knowing Savai. No, you did.
Oh, beautiful. And another dream start here from Taylor. Going to go ahead and get the Dragon Rage showing, plus the Bauble gives you a little bit of immediate value. Don't have to use a fetch land or crack the Bauble quite yet in order to make a decision on it. And we're going to leave that card on top. So no crack on the Bauble.
Yeah, I love this no crack. Your opponent showed you Thought Season game 1. Right. Might as well just, you know, wait. You don't have any mana. Nothing to worry about. Boom, stop.
Found a target this game. That lined up much better as it goes on an adventure. There we go. Got our little adventure token there taken care of. Gets to join Obosh in the zones that are exiled, but specifically named. Gonna choose to Bauble now. Take a look. Maybe
I love
fetch
this
land follow up. Yeah, waited on it. Get a little bit more equity out of your cards. No rush. No rush.
Yeah, if you have a fetch land and you sort of your next turn's kind of maybe already lined up where you're not really needing anything, might as well wait, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to really need to jam my Ragavan this turn or whatever. It's like there's a Bone Crusher Giant coming down. So, you know, who cares?
Absolutely. Here's a quick fetch on turn 3. I have to imagine that Robert, whose deck flush with odd cards, very interested in the turn 3 play. We'll see exactly what that manifests in. But Robert, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B with all this 3-drop action with like 1 Liliana, a couple Kaya's Guiles, Kolaghan's Command, stuff like that. All those lining up really, really well against Dragon's Rage Channeler. We'll see exactly what he has to deploy here.
Yeah.
3 mana.
I think that's Kaya Orzhov Usurper. Yeah.
No, thank you. The Spell Pierce is going to take care of the Kaya, and that's huge for Taylor.
Yeah, we talked about this before too. If you're Robert, like, will my opponent keep Spell Pierces in? What will they do? We played a long game 2, saw no Spell Pierces. So I think it made sense for Robert to jam there and get the minus value. But Spell Pierce coming in hot.
And the Surveil turns on Delirium right away, hitting land. The instant goes to the yard. That's 4 cards, 4 types, 3 damage coming across as required by Dragon's Rage Channeler. And what a great sequence for Taylor there. Spell Pierce, we talked about it all, like you said, may not line up, looked incredible there against Kaya Orzhov Usurper that would have otherwise taken the Dragon's Rage Channeler off the table as Island very quickly fetched here for Taylor. Maybe a little pleased with himself.
It's possible Taylor also brought in the Spell Pierces after seeing so many spot removal spells in the last game. It's just like these bolts did almost nothing. Maybe I just want to try and line up against a Prismatic. Oh my goodness, Murktide, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, also, I love how Taylor's so nonchalant about this. Like, yeah, I had the Spell Pierce. Yeah, obviously I have Delirium. You're dead.
Obviously. Here's a Murktide Regent. 4/4 doesn't matter. Gonna win the race anyway. Robert,
I didn't come out here to lose round 1.
And this shows kind of the explosiveness that the Murktide deck can have. You mentioned the flexibility when we were talking about the sideboarding. I think it really shows itself here in the aggressive stance that the Murktide deck can put forth here when on the play. Or, I'm sorry, on the draw, but still, even on the draw.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good when your deck can play, like we saw in that last game, played a really good 1-for-1 game. Even when our 1-for-1 cards lined up kind of poorly, we still did a great job of getting it to work out. And then now this game, look, that same exact deck, almost no changes. We're just an aggressive deck that can put our opponent immediately on the back foot. And if Robert doesn't answer this board immediately, I'm going to let you know a secret. Taylor probably has a lot of good 1-for-1 cards and is ahead on board. It's going to work out pretty well.
Absolutely. And here's the Path to Exile. That one, more or less required here to answer the Murktide Regent, lest we see a repeat of game 2. Going to go ahead and take care of business here. Basic on the way for Taylor.
I like that Taylor did a little force negation check. Make Robert think about it in the future. Like, no, didn't he draw the force?
Keep on his toes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Looks like,
see how many islands are left. We out of islands? Didn't mill any. Is there one in the hand? Failed to find. There's one in the hand. Hello.
Now we got some value. That's a good answer to Murktide Regent. Before maybe we open up some double spell situations for Taylor. Not today, as we do see this Bone Crusher Giant come off the adventure.
Absolutely. Go ahead and exile that. No downside. Thank you. Path to Exile looking nasty. And now, Dragon's Rage Channeler, we have some things to be able to turn on, but still a long way from Delirium. There's land. Let's see what we can find off Mishra's Bauble. Looking at graveyard, basically any diverse type. Cards maybe on top. Expressive Iteration. I don't know what we're looking for, but definitely don't want to lose the race to this Bone Crusher Giant. Expressive
Iteration is one you'd probably keep. I imagine you maybe end up keeping like a bolt or something for the Bone Crusher Giant. Just, to answer it right away. Robert is sort of running lowish on cards.
And Taylor's a lot of looks, right? If we graveyard this, we have the Bauble, we have the Misty Rainforest to help kind of control what you draw off the Bauble. So, the first card would have to be pretty good. You can see Taylor really giving it a lot of thought. Card has to be pretty close.
Yeah, I wonder if the card I could think of that might be close is like an Unholy Heat situation where eventually it turns on. And right now it isn't very good. Also, maybe there's some amount of thought to like a consider type card. Like, do I want to keep this, multiple turns here? Think about that. Looks like we do have a Takenuma
on top of the library. Actually, a pretty good one for Robert in this spot. Something like the Bone Crusher Giant getting answered stuff. But Taylor, clearly wants the card right away if we're cracking the Bauble. You mentioned this, the Thoughtseize deck. The Thoughtseizes typically do stay in against these kind of counterspell setups. So, Lightning Bolt is in the hand. I don't know if it was there before, but potentially the card that was left there.
Yeah, I think we have a Bolt and an Unholy Heat. It was a little hard. You flicked them a little quick there for me, but definitely has an island.
Yeah, we know about that one. That was face up from the Path to Exile. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say Taylor, I think, has done a really great job of playing with intent and thinking through his turn. A little bit of a small misstep on that last turn to play the fetch land before. We all know it's in your hand. You sort of looked everywhere, and then you were like, oops, I let my sideboard out the island.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah. Where could the last island be?
Yeah.
Creature milled off of the thing. And Seasoned Pyromancer are a big pickup. Does a lot to like help swing races. Also, obviously, creature for the Dragon's Race Challenge. So now this fetch land representing Delirium at any point. Whenever Taylor's ready to turn that thing on, he has the ability to.
Yeah. Let's see.
Players giving a lot of thought to these turns. These turns pretty critical for how the rest of this game's going to play out. And Lingering Souls is a great pickup again for Robert. Can do a lot with this one. Either stave off the attacks or maybe do some multi-blocking setups.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if Robert's going to fetch or play around Spell Pierce. Yeah, because you did have Flashback Lingering Souls, which is just, a clean block on the DRC. But looks like we're going to respect Spell Pierce.
You could also just like race the DRC, right? I mean, you just start attacking with the other ones, kind of like a weird Bitter Blossom impression where you just like attack with some, leave some behind, that kind of thing.
Hold on, we're doing some math. 4 is bigger than 3. I got my fingers right here. This is more.
How do you do it, math? See, this is why they pay you the big bucks. This is that content people come for. Is there?
Wait, your
mathematic skills?
It's attack for 3.
3 damage coming across the red zone. No blocks at all, it looks like. So that's going to put Robert down to 12. Taylor at 15. So on the front foot there in the attacks. We know we have an Unholy Heat in hand. That one works whenever we want. Got Delirium online. Got Consider potentially as an option. And then, of course, gonna pull that one out. Yep. See, okay. That costs 5. I have 5. Pass. Your turn. We can make decisions later, says Taylor.
I respect it. Some players might not want to look at it because they're like, oh, I don't want to know my opponent to know or blah, blah, blah. But not only does your opponent play the card, but it's better for you to make informed decisions than to be like guessing, Right. It's like, oh, I thought it was just instant. Turns out it's a sorcery speed. I need to do this. You lose. That looks a lot worse than, oh, my opponent, is reminded I had a card in graveyard that they knew about.
Sure. I mean, that worth noting, if we do the Seasoned Pyromancer path, that does turn off Delirium. So maybe, that factors in the mix here for how Taylor's going to sequence things. And, we'll see if the Dragon's Age channel even lives through the turn. That's certainly not a guarantee against a deck that has access to red, black, and white, all of which are colors that contain removal spells.
Yeah, my guess would be that if Robert flashes back like a Lingering Souls, we might see Taylor flash back the Seasoned Pyromancer just to give himself something to do with his mana. But, with just this Seasoned Pyromancer coming down here, it looks like we're going to Consider first.
Consider in response, looking for Counterspell, maybe. Taking a quick look. Gonna have 2 Surveils. Bolt hits the bin. Now the Surveil from Consider resolving is going to go off. Ragavan very quickly hitting the bin. Not great against all these tokens. And it looks like Seasoned Pyromancer is going to resolve. Path to Exile and a card I didn't get a great look at hit the bin. 2 cards coming. We'll see if it's a spell or not. It is not. It was a land.
Yeah, interesting.
That's Arid Mesa. Yeah. Going to take a look at Seasoned Pyromancer. Yep. 2 cards coming.
Yeah.
Now we 3 mana left over. We can buy Obosh. That's the floor of this turn. We also have Flashback Lingering Souls. Robert flush with things to do with mana.
Yeah. And looks like Robert did draw a spell. Just double checking Taylor's hand. It looks like Fable, the Mirror Breaker coming down. And yeah, Taylor seems to have Unholy Heat and plus another one. And not quite what you're looking for here, as Robert is from the board, but Taylor has EE in the deck. So he might be trying to sculpt the game towards that.
Right, and a lot of looks. I mean, Dragon's Rage Chandler is, not only great at pressuring, but great at getting a lot of looks and a lot of different cards. Every card that we cast gets us a look at another card. And then, if you're looking for a specific card like EE, having all these removal spells and considers does do a good job of doing that. And I think we left the card on top. I can't be excited about that if you're Robert.
Yeah, I was curious if we're supposed to maybe... Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, I was curious if we're supposed to hit the Seasoned Pyro in case of EE, but I guess we're pushing damage as Fury comes down, and that's going to definitely clean up. Yeah, all these tokens are just gone.
Get them gone. And we have Delirium once again, 3 coming across the red zone. Seasoned Pyromancer can't block that one. So even though we got, a second chapter of Fable coming off this turn, Robert under a lot of pressure. Fury not only going to do a good job cleaning up these tokens, also does a great job pressuring the opponent, getting life total done. And that is kind of the power of Fury as a card that the Murktide deck has access to.
Yeah, you're ready for some high-level analysis. Fury is often a 3-for-1 and kills the opponent quickly. That's what you want in a card that's also sometimes free. I'll be taking the rest of the round
Zero
off. Have
mana?
fun.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Can't talk enough about how powerful these elementals are. But overall, I mean, if you want to talk about these kinds of designs, I think they have done a good job of giving us the magic that we see here. A lot of back and forth, a lot of like very fair. Modern at one point in time was just kind of blowing the doors off of each other. As an entwined Kaya's Guile going to go on the stack. 6 mana paid for that one. Yeah, check it out. I get the whole Christmas list.
Holy. All right, check. Do you know all the modes of Kaya Guile?
I know we got an edict. I know we nuke the graveyards. I know we get a 1/1. The last one, I think it gains life, but I couldn't tell you the rest.
Yeah, you gain 4 life. Bam.
Oh, there you go.
Undo
Awesome.
the DRC a hit. Yeah. Congratulations
Beautiful.
on passing the test.
I mean, every single one of these modes matters. I love this use of mana from Robert. Being able to swing this race, get rid of a threat. I mean, even though you could take 6 here, you've got a blocker. 2 mana. Yeah. Ledger Shredder. Does a good job of blocking. Here's an attack. Gonna eat a chump. Seasoned Pyromancer are still around, but Fable coming along. If this Fable can ever be not summoning sick with Seasoned Pyromancer, Mason, that's a good setup, I think.
Yeah, that's some Kiki Jiki stuff right there. So we do have a bolt for this Fury.
And a huge pickup. Lightning Bolt for Fury. Certainly the pickup for this turn. Can't imagine we're making the block otherwise. And Fury going to hit the bin. Now only a Ledger Shredder left behind. We'll see if Robert is going to play another spell. Going to let that connive potentially happen. Yeah, it seems like it is worth it to him as Flashback Lingering Souls is happening. Taylor, quick on the connive. Land quickly hits the bin. It's just a 1/3 and more tokens coming for Robert. Suddenly, things went from pretty bad for Robert to really, really good thanks to Kaya's Guile. That was a really, really sweet entwine. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that was great. Looks like Taylor's going to let the Lingering Souls resolve. Looks like maybe he had some responses that could have happened. Don't know exactly what's in Taylor's hand, but a lot of different things it could be here. And I wonder if Robert was even supposed to flashback here, just because Expressive Iteration is the way Taylor gets out of this, and every look towards that card could matter so much as Obosh does get added to the hand.
Yeah, I mean, you do have the companion buy, right? That Robert does anyway, but you could do that, use some mana and not cast any spells and not give a connive. But I think adding more pressure to the mix, kind of where Robert wanted to be based on how he played. And a draw, play Dragon Chandler, pass the turn, and now Reflection of Kiki Jiki is no longer summoning sick, available to do some copying. And take a look at this one. That can take any non-legendary. So no second Obosh, wouldn't want it anyway. Legend Rule is not very fun, as Obosh does hit the attempt to hit the battlefield. Counterspell going to come down, trigger the Dragon's Reach Chandler's Surveil. One type away. Yeah, he tops it. So clearly doesn't turn on Delirium and is potentially a card he wants.
Yeah, now Robert's got to take a big think. Okay, I can activate this Fable, but maybe this card I have in hand, it might be something like a Fatal Push or, another Prismatic Ending. Might just be worth it to actually, kill the DRC, get it out of the way. We're going to see. As we
Ragavan. Gotta make 1 token, but you get 2 cards for your trouble anyway. Don't have to actually discard 2 to get 2. Part of the power of Seasoned Pyromancer when you're low on resources can be just strict card advantage, even if you aren't getting the 1/1s. Get a little bit of that action here alongside a 1/1 as a bunch of tokens now all over the battlefield for Robert. Is this a tokens deck or a mid-range deck? What are we doing here?
I don't know. I'm noticing a lot of 0 mana value cards in our Obosh deck. That's just all I can think about.
It's just maybe less of a synergy than some of the other things. As an attack with the Seasoned Pyromancer copy does come through. A little thing about the block. Block does happen. No effects. Follow up. Expressive Iteration is the card on top. Exactly what Taylor's looking for. Let's see if this Surveil. Gonna leave that one on top too. Has to be pretty good.
Looks like it was a DRC. Found a Ragavan and an Otawara. Gonna put the DRC in hand.
Bottom of the Ragavan. Only access to 1 more red this turn. Couldn't cast it anyway. Gonna
small, yeah. So yeah, we're 1 minute left in the round. The players are playing kind of quickly. I was about to say Taylor has been very composed, made a small misstep there, not putting Otawara in hand to trigger the connive and potentially keep a spell. But time is going late here. And so when you're low on time, it is better to play a little sloppy and get the match over with and find a winner than to get a draw, especially in round number 1. So understandable from Taylor here, been playing very precise the entire game. Got a little bit of snow, that's okay.
I mean, this is a great spot now for Taylor as far as just on board racing. We have a lot of power in the air, right? We got Delirium now. Sorcery turns on Delirium. I see instant sorcery creature. land. So that's 4. So we got 6, 7, 8 power in the air. That does a great job of winning the race against a lot of power on the ground. But this reflection of the Kiki-Jiki plus Seasoned Pyromancer is going to give Robert a ton of looks in the following turn as Robert quickly untaps as these players are moving through, trying to use the most of this last minute in the round. But I have to imagine this is probably going to be over in turns as another Kaya's Guile going to come down. Looks like an Edict and make a 1/1 the modes.
Yeah, you're seeing Robert once again really respecting Spell Pierce. Could have entwined. We saw that happen before. Decides not worth it.
Graveyard's a Seasoned Pyromancer. There's a copy. 2 cards coming for Robert. Another token coming for Robert. Just game objects everywhere. Attack for 2. The only attack. Block with the 2/4. Happens. Follow up.
Yeah, we might see a stomp here.
Oh, we have the stomp? It's not just a bluff attack like it was last turn. This turn, we can finish off the Ledger Shredder. And I think there's a Prismatic ending too. We might be able to just clear Taylor's board.
Yeah, so this is our first spell of the turn. Oh, no, this is the second, so we're just going to get a mill.
Yeah, we Kai's Guiled, so yeah, Conniv's going to happen. Yeah. That Graveyard's a Murktide Regent. Not even sure if that's where Taylor wants to be. Doesn't have an option in the matter.
Yeah, great play there from Robert, making sure not to stomp and potentially, obviously Taylor has no card in hand. But if had stomped there, would be in a very awkward position. Robert gets to decide. And it looks like time was called in the round. Players have suddenly slowed down. Yeah, and there is a dice at the top of the turn. So we turn number 1 for Taylor. And Taylor's going to need another Expressive Iteration, Murktide Regent type card to really start winning this game. As we do see Taylor move to combat.
Yeah, I mean, Dragon Rage Shredder has to come across the battlefield here. And maybe this is the first time we've seen this game where that's actually a downside. There's a lot of, chumps that can be made. Even just taking the damage is like fine. And there is a large attack coming back at Taylor if there's no follow-up, which, I mean, can't imagine there is. We're looking at blind cards off the top, basically out of resources.
Yep.
And Robert maybe he's going to be able to get this done in turns as we are in turn 1 here. Stomp can go face. Oh, no, we're going at the Dragon's Rage Channeler because we've blocked with the Lingering Soul. So that is actually just going to take care of the Dragon's Rage Channeler.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe could have gone face there. I don't know. I want to race.
It was pretty close, right? 4, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, we were really close to Bone Crusher being lethal. But I guess because there's enough turns in turns, you can just this turn play the Bone Crusher, copy the Fable, attack for like 8, leave back a chump blocker for Ragavan, and call it a day.
And as you mentioned before, a lot of times the spots out for the Murktide deck are like Expressive Iteration, and keeping the Dragon's Rage Channeler off the board is a big deal as far as mitigating what that Expressive Iteration can really look like in percent. As we're copying the Dragon's Rage Channeler once again, here's a dash Ragavan. Haven't done the math, but can't imagine it looks great, and certainly over 2 turns it's going to look great, as here's just a mess of permanents coming across the red zone. 10,
11.
How much damage?
Yeah.
2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
11.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
It's a Bone Crusher giant copy.
Oh, it's a Bone Crusher copy. I thought it was another.
No, we didn't discard any cards.
Oh, all right, sure. There we go. Down to 3. Bolts lethal for Robert. Does not have it. Robert needs a great one. Here's Expressive Iteration. If a card's gonna get you out, it's this one.
Land,
not great.
Oh, another Expressive Iteration.
Okay.
All right, maybe we can. Yeah, if we find EE plus Kill Spell, can we live? All right, we're a little short, maybe. I don't know. We have to see exactly what comes off the top.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We can take a hit from the Seasoned Pyromancer again, but we can't take a hit from the other 3 drops. So we'll have to see exactly what Taylor has access to. Counterspell, Ledger Shredder, Land. Yeah, that's not going to do it. And they're going to offer the Fist Bump. Done in turns is the revival of Lingering Souls in Modern via Robert Ganzi and his take on Mardu Midrange with Obosh. And as far as a deck constructed to beat Izzet Murktide, I think it did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, it did a really good job, and seems like Robert really kind of knows the battles he wants to fight and is fighting them. We saw Robert win our RCQ, the side event one yesterday, and this is, we'll start off 5-0 there, just 6-0 now. I'm just going to maybe run it all the way back top 8. But yeah, the Lingering Souls card really well lined up against Murktide Regent. We're going to see how it lines up versus the rest of the field, but we might be seeing Robert later today with such an exciting deck.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it as far as, exciting deck, an interesting take. And I have to say a lot of the appeal of Modern, I think for everybody at large, is the flexibility and the availability of cards like Lingering Souls to come back and make a huge impact here. Well, with that, we will be going to round number 2 here very soon. You got to see, a long round 1. We're going to bring you more action here in round number 2 here very shortly. Do not go anywhere. Thanks for watching.